Hey, everybody. Once again, welcome to another episode of Fixated on Real Estate Experts Live. This is by far one of my favorite topics that we ever do, and I know we will do more in the future and continue to do so throughout the history of Experts Live as we continue to do Fixated on Real Estate. And that is business scaling and systems in real estate itself. We have some amazing panelists. We have our perpetual guest, Mr. Jay Scott, who contractually obligated cannot be the co-host because he is the Bigger Pockets Business Podcast, which is an amazing podcast. Check it out. But he's going to be with us, and he's amazing at systems. We have Rich Fettke, who co-CEO of the Real Wealth Network with his lovely wife, Kathy Fettke, who most of you guys already know. And then, of course, AJ Osborne, who runs millions of square footage in self-storage and is an awesome, awesome professional business owner. We go over so much incredible stuff today. You're going to hit so many key points in your business. And if you guys are just starting out in this business and wanting to scale your business to the next level, this is definitely one for you. But for most of you that are already in this business and need the tools and resources and potentially the information that you're really looking for to go to that next step, this is definitely a webinar that you're going to want to listen to and stick with. So we go over hiring, we go over self-auditing, we go over KPIs, SOPs, documentation. We go over why you should be hiring people, even if you can't afford it, and how you can actually hire your first person, even if you believe you can't afford to hire that person to begin with, and why it's so important to do that. We talk about pivoting and how, like, at what point do you know that you need to change directions in your company, or when you really need to go all in and fully commit. How to test your business out before you actually jump ship and quit your job, or before you jump ship and actually like put more income and more investment capital into what you're actually doing. So many key points. I love this conversation. You guys are going to enjoy it so much with these guys, and I hope to have them again on the future show so we can dive into these details so much, because there's so much. So check it out, and here we go. Hey everybody, I am Tarl Yarber with Fixated Real Estate, and I am here once again with my perpetual guest and unofficial co-host, because he's not legally allowed to be the co-host, contractually obligated to other things such as the Bigger Pockets Business Podcast. But Jay Scott is also with us. So welcome, Mr. Jay Scott. Always happy to have you every single time we do these, every single week that we remember to do these. So we are excited to have our guest today. Today's webinar is freaking awesome. It's one of my favorite topics. I know it's one of Jay's favorite topics, and that's business scaling and systems, specifically in real estate investing. And the best thing about this topic is it applies to pretty much any type of business out there, because there's most people that have issues with hiring, with firing, with systemizing, with SOPs, KPIs. How do I scale? How do I handle my finances? How do I do operations? How do I create a culture of success? All those things that most business owners want. And we're going to dive into so much of that today, and it applies to your business. So ask yourself before we get started, are you running a real estate business, or are you running a real estate hobby? And we're going to find out about that today as we dig deep into this. So welcome. And as we jump into this, let me first introduce the amazing, the incredible, the handsome panelists for today. We're going to start with Mr. AJ Osborne. AJ, thank you for joining us once again. This is your second webinar with us.
Hey, awesome. If you introduce me as handsome, I will always come on here.
I was speaking about Rich, but we'll get to Rich in a second. But you first, though, right? AJ, you are the owner of Keylock Storage and a couple other companies. AJ Osborne has been a leader in the storage industry since 2003. He specializes in acquisitions, development, conversion, and property management. The current Keylock portfolio covers over 1 million square feet and is expanding. He is helping to usher new technology into the industry by opening up a 120,000 square foot conversion that ran completely off of mobile phones. He started and runs the largest self-storage podcast, Self-Storage for Income, and you wrote a book, and you did a bunch of other crazy stuff, and you do other businesses too. So we're awesome and excited to have, actually we are awesome. We're excited to have you with us today. Thank you, AJ. Now the handsome devil, Mr. Rich Fettke. Lucky. You guys have been fortunate enough to see his amazingly incredible wife, Miss Kathy Fettke, on this webinar multiple times. And we only used Kathy to get to Rich. So we could finally have him on the webinar with us, which is exciting. So Rich Fettke is the co-CEO of Real Wealth Network. Yes, I know you guys all see Kathy Fettke, but behind the scenes is the devilishly handsome Mr. Rich Fettke to help run the company here. We're going to have so much fun with this guy. All right. Rich Fettke is co-CEO of realwealth.com, a 3-time Inc. 5000 rank real estate investment network with 27 employees and over 50,000 members. He is passionate about developing the company's team and systems and is always looking for new ways to bring good people to the network. A licensed real estate broker and investor, Rich is also a master certified business coach and the author of the book Extreme Success, which is an awesome book. With a love for adventure sports, Rich has competed in the ESPN X Games and is a record-holding bungee jumper, rock climber, skier, and surfer. He lives in Malibu, California, and his wife and co-CEO, Kathy, and their 2 daughters. Yes, he has bungee jumped off of many things, and he does hold many records in that department. Real quick, what is the craziest bungee jump you've ever done?
Oh, man. I would say jumping off Half Dome in Yosemite was the craziest. Yeah.
Jumping off Half Dome. Do you want to admit to the other bungee jump you did or no?
I guess we can now. Yeah. Golden Gate Bridge, but that was before the years of terrorism where you get shot when you go under there now.
Yes. Rich is not just a CEO of a large company. He is also an extreme sports athlete and one of my favorite people besides Jay Scott, of course, and AJ, I guess.
Rich, what's it like working for Kathy? That's what everybody wants to know.
It's painful. No. No, she's great. She's the beauty and the beast, you know.
She
works
boss
well.
you around a lot.
No, we have a very good
I'm just kidding. I'm just teasing. Co-CEOs.
Yeah.
We know the truth, but we'll call you co-CEOs.
Okay.
The wife is always in charge. Trust me.
Amen.
I know that.
Amen.
All right, so let's jump into it. Today's topic, ladies and gentlemen, business scaling and systems. So one of the questions that we always get when it comes to business scaling and systems is how do we actually, how do you actually know when you need help in your business? Or what is the first thing you should, when you're looking for as far as a warning sign, what's the first thing I should do as a real estate investor when it comes to hiring people, or when it comes to like, I'm stuck in something and I don't know how to take it to the next level, or I see all these awesome real estate investors out there with hundreds and hundreds of deals and like, I can't even handle 2. Like, how do I continue to grow from there? And that's a big issue for a lot of people, like getting that, they hit that plateau and they get stuck there and they don't know how to go to the next level. So let's first start with what's the common most, in our opinion, the most common trait or the most common challenge that we see other real estate investors facing that's preventing them from being able to scale and systemize their business. And I'll start with one of you guys first. So what is the most common trait that you think is what's holding people back from being able to scale and systemize their business to the next level? And let's start with AJ Osborne.
Right on. Delegation and working in a team, thinking you got to do it all and thinking that somehow it's all dependent solely on you. I think that just cripples people to be able to expand, to be able to move forward, to be able to achieve higher goals and build an infrastructure that can continue to expand without them. They work in their business, not on the business, and that's crippling.
Love that point. That's excellent. Mr. Rich Fettke.
Yeah, what AJ said for sure. Absolutely. And I think stepping back from that, so the next step is really looking at what is it that you are really good at? What do you love doing? And focus on that. And then look at what are the things that you're not great at and you don't love doing, and that making that your first hire. So, you know, for Kathy and me as investors, it was bookkeeping. So the first thing we did was get a bookkeeper. So I think that's a key.
I agree. That was actually the first person I brought onto my team was a bookkeeper as well. So yeah. Amen to that. Mr. Jay Scott, you see this all the time.
Yeah, I'm going to step back even further. I'm going to say people don't know what they're trying to achieve. If you said to me, who should be the first person I should hire? How many people should I hire? What role should I hire for? Well, it depends. Are you trying to do 2 houses a year? Because I'm going to give you a much different answer if you want to flip 2 houses a year than if you want to buy 8,000 units next year. If you want to buy 8,000 units next year, well, your scaling plan and your hiring plan and your delegation plan is going to be a whole lot different. So I'm a big fan of start with the end goal in mind. And so let's say you want to flip 300 houses this year. Great. There are people that do that. That's what is that? That's 300 houses a year. That's 6 houses a week. So that's about a house a day. So how do I get to a house a day? Well, now that you have that goal of I need to get to a house a day, then you can start thinking about all the things that specifically you need to do. But you got to start with what that goal is.
Love that. Yeah. Work with the end in mind And we all have different goals. We all have different process for what we want. And it changes. Like sometimes you might start with one thing and you might go, I don't really like this direction. And you might need to be able to shift it and go from there. But like, I love everything that you guys said for each one of those. I know for me, it's a constant aspect for myself of looking like, where am I the bottleneck in my business? And that I've seen, like, it's that introspection, like being able to look at yourself and your business objectively to know, like, the reason why it's not successful is not because of these things here, but because of me, like in some way, and being okay with that. And
Yes.
being that's I think the big, like, being okay that the reason you are where you are is because of you. And that's a good thing, because then you can start realizing what you need to fill in to be able to help you get to the next level, or who you need to bring in, or what you need to remove from yourself, or what you really should be focusing on, and blah, 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 blah. And
Right.
so it's add that to that mix, and we're
You know,
done.
I
Right?
want to add actually one point to that, because that's so critical when I'm talking with people and looking at it. We audit our businesses, but a lot of people don't audit themselves. What are you doing during the day? Break it down by hours. What actions are you doing in your business that is dependent on you to survive? And then once again, like you were saying, Tarl, what are you good at? Like, you got to have, that goes back to what Jay Scott was saying. You don't know, if you're not analyzing these things, where you're trying to go, you can't break those things down. So you got to open it up and audit yourself first. And then that gets you at least on a path to move forward.
Love it. Absolutely. Audit yourself on a regular basis, and check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? And I think that's from something. Um, I want to start. I want to add to this, like, with each one of you guys' questions, because we're all we all are in the same industry, but we all are kind of doing totally different businesses completely. And we all had a different path, the four of us, for where we got where we are. And I want to start with by really asking each one of you guys to kind of, on a short, simple way, discuss, like, at what point in your business did you realize that you needed to really start scaling up and getting out of your own way, and stop being more of a DIY, and start looking at, like, I need to figure out these processes, systems, and start really looking at how to scale my business up and make this a business? Was there a moment? Was there a time? Was there a situation? Was there a wake up call? Something along those lines that maybe you could share that people can relate to. And then we're going to start diving into some more nuts and bolts with this for sure. So, Mr. Rich Fettke, do you want to go first?
Yeah, it's home for sure. We started the business in 2003, and we're just kind of bootstrapping it. We made a few hires, and we were up to about, I think we had 8 or 9 employees in 2013. And that's where we really stopped. Kathy and I stopped and really looked at, where do we want this business to go? Before, it just kind of evolved organically and was growing, and bigger things were happening, but we were starting to lose communication between people on our team and all that. And so someone gave us an assignment, a business coach gave us an assignment to create an organizational chart of our business 5 years in the future. And that was really powerful, to lay out, where do we want this business to be in 5 years? What's our purpose? What's our mission? And what's our outcome? But looking at, what are the seats, that we're going to have in place. And in the beginning, we had it all laid out. And in the beginning, it was Kathy's face and my face all over this organizational chart. But then what we started to do is put, like, okay, this is a hire for Q2 2014. This is a hire for Q4, whatever. And that was a really powerful exercise. So that was transformational for us in really looking at where we wanted the business to go and how we wanted to scale. And that's when we really kind of got into that mindset of, how do we scale this thing? How do we grow it? And so we can do more of what we love and not get caught up in the stuff that we don't.
Fantastic. So having that direction, having that push. What made you guys hire a business coach?
Oh, well, I was a business coach for about 15 years. So it's like the carpenter who has a squeaky front step and it's not fixed. So I didn't apply some of these lessons to our business, even though I had been using them for years. But I also knew I've always worked with a coach, and this was like taking the next step. We were kind of hitting the ceiling. We were at a little over $1 million in revenue, and we had that several years in a row. And we're like, man, how do we break through the ceiling? And that actually was it. It was, we doubled our business the next year, and then doubled it again the next year. So it worked.
Fantastic. Mr. J. Scott.
So when did I know I needed to? If I'm allowed to, can I share my screen for just a second?
Go. Knock yourself out.
Okay. This is how I knew I needed to work on my on scaling. So this is a picture of my wife the day she gave birth to my first son, or our first son. And yeah, she's on the phone. She's got two computers there working deals, and that little thing above the pink computer, that's my son's head. He's breastfeeding. So anyway, I'm going to stop sharing that picture now before I get in trouble. But that was the moment that we realized that we needed to do something different, because we got out of the corporate world. We started to flip houses and do real estate and other businesses because we wanted to put lifestyle and our lives ahead of our business and ahead of work. And it was that day, about a year after we got married and started our business, that we realized we were really being unsuccessful at that. So it was right around that time that I said, okay, really need to focus on how do we scale? How do we get out of our own way? How do we start working on our business, not in our business? And it took a year or two after that, but we eventually, by the time my second son was born, we got there.
That's a good why. That's one of the best whys. AJ, your turn.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting listening to the stories. And there's a couple times I think in the business where it's like, oh, we need to do this differently. Then you go to a certain point, you're like, oh, we got to do this differently again. And I think that's an ongoing process, or at least should be. And when the first time was, I was a sales guy, and it was just, I think, basic, like everybody else, where they're going, man, I'm on a treadmill. And this is only sustainable if I'm running. And the moment this stops, it's all over for me. And it was like, I got to do something different. And so we had a couple investment deals, right? But it was nowhere near able to cover my income. And so we thought, how do we take this to the next level? How do we really create this into a business? And that kind of started off our first one, where we hired, like you guys said, we hired a bookkeeper, some things like that. And then the second time was after I got sick and became paralyzed, and we had to figure out, I'd lost my job. My boss came in and fired me in the hospital. And now we're like, okay, what do we do now? And I've lost this huge portion of income that we had coming from the job, and we can live. We lost, though, a lot of income. So how do we really take this to a different level, and how do we achieve new goals? And that created a whole nother process on how to scale. But I think lots of times for most people, it's out of either necessity, need, or two, it's just the realization that something has to change. This is no longer sustainable doing what I'm doing.
And you guys, I mean, like AJ, like you took a little nap for a little while in your life. Like what? And you had to make, that's the necessity part. And I'm joking with you, right? But what can you give a very short synopsis of what happened in your life to create that motivation? And then number two, is there a place that people can listen to the full story a little bit more to get to understand what you had to really go through?
Yeah. So I had something called Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is, I guess we all have it. It's just when your nerves attack you. So I went from being totally normal to completely paralyzed in a very short period of time. It was out of nowhere, just was paralyzed out of a tub. Long story short, though, I went to the hospital, was put into a coma. I came out, was a quadriplegic from head to toe on life support, where I remained for months. And then from there, I was in the hospital. They let me out of the hospital. I went home paralyzed and in bed while my wife and my 4 children, my newborn baby, took care of me. And so you can go hear more about that on self-storage income. I talk about it on our podcast, or you can go to the site, or AJ Osborne Instagram. He has video stuff. But it was at that point, and during that point, that my boss actually came into the hospital while I was lying paralyzed in a hospital bed to inform me that my employment had ended. And we lied there thinking, now what do we do with the rest of our lives? And so that was a whole new thing. What do we devote our lives to, especially if that life involves me never being able to walk or do things again? Because at that time it was very much unknown, and we had to reconstruct our lives, so to speak.
And it's when you have that, you were the made breadwinner. You were the way that you made money for your family. It was dependent on you working purely, right? Commission based too, right?
Yes, commission based.
Yeah, commission based. And all of a sudden you couldn't do any of it.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's some motivation there, right?
Yeah, a little. That gets you working.
Yeah. And you got to rest for a little while too. So
yeah, I got a really long break to hang out in a bed.
I
didn't move at all.
No, you post on your social media too, on your Instagram, some of the videos of you doing rehabilitation and everything. It's just incredible what just to be able to watch and so forth. And thanks for sharing all that. And Rich, do you mind sharing briefly your story, a similar story in that regard, as far as what motivated you and Kathy to get into real estate to begin with?
Sure. Yeah. Try to do as succinct as I can. I was diagnosed with melanoma, which is, usually is not too bad. It's like you can get the surgeries to remove it. And so I went through that process, and my doctor said, I think you should get a CT scan to make sure everything's good. And they saw 4 masses on my liver. And so it was through a period of several months waiting for multiple tests to see what was going on. And I had an ultrasound that also showed the 4 masses on my liver. So as I waited for a PET scan, which is an advanced cancer scan, I met with an oncologist, and he said, it looks like this is spread to your liver and you probably have about 6 months to live. And we had a 7-year-old daughter at the time, a 3-year-old daughter. It was like a major kick in the gut, no doubt. So Kathy was a stay-at-home mom at that point and was kind of freaking out. Like, what am I going to do financially, where I was the breadwinner? And so she had this kind of a hobby radio show on a local station, and it was all on personal development, and she would cover different areas of life. And so she said, I'm going to focus on wealth this time. And she started to interview successful people, wealthy people, and found out that most of them made their money through real estate. So she came home and she's like, this is it. This is what we can do. We did a cash out refi on our property that we had in California here, and went to Texas and bought a whole bunch of properties there. And that kind of started us on that path. And later on, after that PET scan, they said, you're cancer free. It was a false positive, they call it, where these masses on my liver were just clusters of blood vessel that like 20% of the population has anyway, in different areas of their body. But that was enough to create the desperation on Kathy's part to be like, what am I going to do to create an income? And that led us to real estate. And then when we formed Real Wealth Network, we had people asking us how we were doing it. And so we figured we'll put a group together, and we figured maybe about 100 or 200 people someday we'd grow it to, and didn't know we'd have over 52,000 people in our network today. So yeah, it's been quite a journey.
And that's the story. I mean, like, I don't hear these particular stories, but I do. But there is a similarity that kind of comes towards the end, where it's like you just go down this path and you think you're going to end up in a certain location, but more often than not, we end up somewhere completely different that we never really fully planned on. Absolutely. But the fact is, but you're on a path one way or another, and like it's fascinating. I mean, it's like, in a sense, with what you guys had to do, if you guys had similar stories, in a sense where, AJ, you were the sole breadwinner and income only came when you worked, right? Rich, you were a coach, right? And you made a bunch of money public speaking and coaching people and so forth, but you were the breadwinner for doing that for your family.
Right.
And that got both of you guys into better systems for real estate. Actually, got you, Rich, into real estate. And then AJ got you basically building the companies that you're building right now.
And both of those stories are a great reminder for all of us out there that are getting into real estate because we want to make more money and we want a better lifestyle. Just a reminder of how fortunate we are, because there are people like Rich and AJ who didn't get into it because they wanted to be lazy and make lots of money, not doing a lot of work. They got into it because literally their lives, their livelihoods, their existence depended on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had to make it happen.
And if you're listening to this, if you were like me when I was in my early 20s and I would hear stories like this when it came to running a business, I would be like, man, I need a story like that so I could be motivated to do what I need to do in my business. You don't want that story.
No.
And you don't need that story either.
No.
And so it's create your own, have your own motivation. And we all have our own reasons to do what we do. And it's different for each of us. And there's no right answer for it. Right. Some of people listening to this right now might be like, no, I want to run a real estate hobby and just have some side hustle money. That's all good. Right. And I would challenge you going like, how can you do that with as little time as possible with the right SOPs and processes so that you can like literally make it a side hustle and be good on it? You want to make extra money in retirement? Great. How can you make that as effective as possible for you? Taking some of the things we're about to dig into. You want to run go ahead.
But all those people out there that are thinking, I don't have enough time, I don't have enough knowledge, I don't have enough money. Let me tell you something. AJ and Rich, they didn't have enough life and they still figured it out. I mean, literally, they were in a much worse position than 99% of the people out there, and they figured it out. Anybody out there can figure it out too.
Absolutely. All right, let's dig into some more great awesomeness. Thank you for sharing, guys. Now, when it comes to hiring, right? Actually, let's step back, right? How do we discover as an investor? Let's talk real estate, right? I'm a real estate investor. I started out when I was 20 years old, technically, and I got into wholesaling, right? One man show, tried to figure it all out, hated it to death, made some money, stopped doing it for a long time, got back into it in 2011. So then I started flipping houses, right? But that's my little story. But when it came to all that stuff, like a lot of people start out wholesaling, they start out flipping, or they buy single families, or they do something along those lines. At what point should people start thinking about hiring somebody and bringing somebody onto their team? And how do we discover who that person should actually be? Like, who should we add to our team to start delegating? And we're going to get into this a bit more, guys, later about delegation and how to actually work with people and SOPs, standard operating procedures, and KPIs, which we believe is the lifeblood of running a successful operation. But at what point should we hire somebody, and who should that be for our business? And how do we discover that as entrepreneurs when we get to that point? Jay, do you got any suggestions?
Yeah. So I like to say, again, we need to start with the end goal in mind. And in this case, the end goal is how much money do we want to be making? Or more importantly, how much money do we want to be making per hour? Some of us may have gotten into real estate because, hey, we'd be happy to make $20, $25 an hour. It's better than the grind at a W-2 where we're making less. Some of us may get in because we want to make $50 or $75 an hour. I got into real estate because I want to make a $500 or $1,000 or more dollars an hour. Like, to me, that's what makes it worth it. So the question becomes, what are those tasks in my business that are generating me $500 or $1,000 an hour or more, and which aren't? And anything that's not generating me $500 or $1,000 an hour or more, I shouldn't be doing, because if I'm focused on those tasks, I'm not making that money. So what are those tasks that make less than $500 or $1,000 an hour? When I figure those out, those are the things I hire out. That includes, at least in my business, all the contracting. I mean, basically, there's no reason I should be painting my own houses, because I can hire somebody to be doing that for $15 or $20 or $25 an hour. So if I'm doing it myself, I'm essentially earning or saving $15 or $20 or $25 an hour. So I don't do any of the contracting in my own house, unless there was something I could do that it would cost me $500 or $1,000 to hire a contractor and I could do just as good of a job. There's no reason to be doing contracting. There's no reason to be doing a lot of the acquisition tasks. There's no reason to be doing a lot of the marketing tasks. There's no reason to be doing a lot of the project management tasks, because none of this, all these things I can hire out for less than $500 an hour. So for me and my business, and we'll go back to my flipping business because my business has changed. But when I was doing my flipping business, it basically boiled down to, there were three things in my business, maybe four things in my business that were literally generating me $500 or $1,000 an hour. Number one, analyzing deals. So I don't trust anybody else in my business to have the final say on a deal. I look at the numbers, I run the numbers, I validate the numbers, because at the end of the day, a deal that generates $50,000 that could be getting me my $500,000 an hour, a deal that loses money isn't. So I have to be analyzing my own deals. Number two, negotiating. My wife and I can easily make $500 an hour negotiate. If we can save $1,000 on a deal in a 10-minute phone call, well, that's $6,000 an hour. So we do a lot of our own negotiating. Fundraising. Fundraising is something that nobody else can do more effectively than I can. People, if they're going to loan me money, they want to know me, they want to meet me, they want to spend time with me. So raising money is going to generate me many thousands of dollars an hour, because it's going to allow me to do more deals. So those are the three big things: the analyzing deals, the raising money, the negotiating. Those are the three big things. And then number four, sort of on that list, is quality control. I always want to spend time making sure that we're putting out quality products, because at the end of the day, doing quality control isn't going to save me $500 or $1,000 on a deal, but it will save my reputation. And if I lose my reputation, that's worth an unlimited amount of money. So at the end of the day, we sat down when we started this and we said, those are the things we should be doing. We should be analyzing deals, negotiating, raising money, and quality control. Everything else we should be hiring out as much as we can.
And I just want to add, just so when people are listening to this, because whatever Jay Scott says is gospel when it comes to real estate, is Jay's talking about him, right? And him and his wife specifically.
100%.
Right. So, because there's other things, like when I hear that, I'm like, yeah, totally. Like, I'm definitely a big fan of the fundraiser part, but I also go, but I can also have somebody else do that. Right. And then, but it depends on where you're at. Same with acquisition, same with everything. But it depends on what's your superpower for your business to help your business out and being honest with it as much as possible. And Jay and Carol were completely honest with themselves, saying, we're going to take care of this and we're going to let everybody else do the other crap, right? For the most part.
Yep.
Right. Cool. What about you, Rich?
And if you love painting, then by all means, paint your own houses if that's something you enjoy, because then you're not doing it as a job. You're doing it because you enjoy it. Or maybe you're happy making $40 an hour. And if you're a good plumber and you can save $100 an hour by doing your own plumbing, great. You're exceeding your $40 an hour goal by doing that $100 an hour task. So I'm not saying don't do any of these other things, but you need to know your numbers and what you're good at and what your time's worth.
And I would add to that being like, if you're going to do that, then there's an opportunity cost to everything that you do, right? So like, if you're going to go love to paint, which there's some people that love to paint, like you said, which I love, you're then giving up other activities that might be and be okay with it, right? We don't want to later hear from you later, be like, I just can't, I don't know, see how you guys can run 20 projects at a time. I'm like, well, that's because you're painting all of them, right? So there's a give and take when it comes to the opportunity costs, and be aware of it and be okay with it. So
good rule of thumb. If you wouldn't go on somebody else's job and do their plumbing for whatever it would cost, like let's say a plumber's $100 an hour. If you wouldn't go do somebody else's plumbing for $100 an hour, don't do your own plumbing. And as opposed to hiring somebody for $100 an hour.
Yeah.
Love it. Mr. Fettke.
What was the question?
Handsome man. So I don't even remember anymore. Basically at what, two things. At what point, should you hire people and start bringing on a team member? And who do you think how do you discover who you should be hiring to begin with? Maybe for your first hire when it comes to running your business, depending on
I spoke to it earlier, so I won't repeat that. Just, I think it's looking at what you're not great at and bring that on. I think that's really important. And so like now where we are is we have a team of leaders who are really self-driven, self-efficient leaders who have their own KPIs and goals to accomplish and all that. So going back in that, for me, like I said, it was kind of organic for us. We started with the, what are we really crappy about and what do we not like to do? And that was the bookkeeping. So we hired a bookkeeper, and then we started to go on for that. And then we started to get a little bit overwhelmed. Kathy was, going out and vetting all these property teams and visiting markets and looking at their product and all that. And she started to get overwhelmed with that and doing all the other things she was doing. So we hired someone who is an expert in that. So that was kind of an organic thing. It's like, where's the pain point as far as what you really don't like doing, or it could be that place where you're feeling overwhelmed and you just need some extra support, where you need to kind of multiply yourself. I think that was key.
Love it. And then AJ, do you have a process that maybe you can help people realize, like, what should I be delegating and what should I be doing myself, and what should I be I'm really good at this thing but not at that? Or is there a process maybe somebody can go through to kind of figure out what they need to do to be able to who they should be hiring and who they should be not, and doing themselves with other stuff?
I once again, kind of like I mentioned before, I call this an audit, because you have to remember, when you're hiring people, hiring people is a form of leverage. You're leveraging time, just like money is, right? And with that, you need to get an ROI. Now, this ROI may be different. So your return on your investment, right, is time, but also I need more stuff out of it than just time. I need expertise, and I need that to improve my business from what I'm currently doing somehow. So you're kind of measuring these things as you go. So when I audit myself, I go and I make a list of all the critical tasks, and I highlight what I call the needle tasks. And those are the tasks, like Jay talked about. These are going to move the needle, right? These are important tasks. So when I go through these, I self-audit and I look at it and I line them all. And I said, listen, during my day, here are the critical tasks that I have to do for my business to run and to grow. Then I line up, what do I hate and what am I not good at? Okay. That's really important, because I need to look here at what I can replace myself with by leveraging time and expertise to come in that will give me more time to place in things that I'm good at, right? Which I also need to look at that on my list of things that I'm good. What am I good at? And then I need to look at how putting those actions in somebody else's hand, that I'm leveraging their time and expertise, how that's going to take my business to the next level, right? Think of it as like a narrative. So if I'm hiring out for these 10 tasks that I have to do every day, like so many of us, bookkeeping's number one, right? Because it's just, there's a straight thing that needs to happen. It's repetitive, it's finite, and it doesn't move the needle very much on revenue growth, right? So that tends to be a first one. So you list those out, you mark them down, you prioritize them to needle movers. So from top to bottom, think of your 10, and these are the continuous tasks that you have. Look at the ones you don't like and aren't good at, that if you put your money behind are going to give you the highest ROI in both time and expertise. Therefore, your business improves. The focus goes to the needle movers, and you can increase your revenue. Then you can worry about the person that you got to hire, right? Mm-hmm. So you got to design that position in order to, once again, leverage your own time, but also improve your business model. Because now you're starting to create this, and you've got to figure out then after that, who's the right person.
And that's a whole nother process. Who's the right person? And keeping them too.
And really, I think the biggest thing that AJ just said that so many of us forget is that we're all so focused on doing those tasks that push our day forward, that check off the boxes of the things that we have to get done that day, that we ignore the tasks that push our business forward. And you need to prioritize. Everybody says, yeah, I need to get insurance on this property, and I need to turn on the utilities, and I can't do anything until I do that. And as soon as I get all that stuff done, then I'll start working on my systems and processes. But that stuff never gets done if that's going to be your attitude. You need to say, I'm going to focus on the other stuff, and then figure out that'll force you to figure out another way to get the other stuff done.
Well, and I have 3 things that I do with all my tasks. I believe I either need to I need to hire it out, right? I need to automate it, or I need to get rid of it. And if I can't hire it out, right, and I can't automate it, then it shouldn't be a part of my business, right? So that's how I look at all those functionalities that I'm doing. Now, obviously, the things that are the prioritized, the needle movers, I keep. But within those 3 things, you'll be shocked on how much you can actually automate. There's so much that you can do in your business that for a very low cost, you can automate that. And that gives you a huge ROI on both time and income. And then from there, you go, so consider that your bottom routine tasks that are always happening in the background that have to be done, and they're just sucks, right? You can automate those. Then you look up at the tasks that are mid-level, and you go, this requires a little expertise. And also, I really don't want to drop these things off. They're kind of important. I hire for those. So it's not just get a person and here's a bunch of stuff, right? Yeah. And that comes to building the systems in place to automate, hire, and then maximize.
And I love this conversation so much. How do you, okay, I got a question, right? And first off, Jay, thank you for saying about the homeowners insurance, because I totally forgot we're buying a house tomorrow and I didn't get that. So I just wrote that down. So thank you. I'm like, I guess I need to automate that. That's actually,
I'm doing 2 refis tomorrow. That's what I've been doing all day today. So yeah, that's where that example came from.
Top of mind.
You know, I'm totally gonna use you guys as, I'm learning too as I'm going through this. And like, I discover every day little blocks in my business, and 9 times out of 10, I'm the block, right? Or I'm the bottleneck in some way. And we discovered that in our business multiple times, even this week. Just now, I'm like, oh man, why am I still doing the homeowners insurance? We've talked about that in the past. Actually, at one time I had my assistant do it, and then we lost her. And then we have a new one. But that said, like, there's things like that that's always changing, and how do you get those things off your plate, right? But I have a question though. Like, this is a serious question. Like, Rich, like, I know I need to hire somebody, but like, I don't know who to hire. But more importantly, like, I can't afford to hire somebody right now.
I think you can't not afford to, that's the key, as far as like the revenue, I mean, do some revenue sharing, that's it. If you can't afford, you don't have the money, that's a great thing. We've done profit sharing since day one at Real Wealth. So you can come in and it's like, I know you don't want to take on a partner, right? I think a partnership is the hardest ship to sail. It's definitely a tough one. I've been in partnerships, but you can bring someone on and say, hey, look, if I can pay you this much, even if it's a small amount, but then the rest can be commission based, or it can be result based, something like that. So that's that's one way to do it.
So you're saying build in their income into the actual activities that they're performing or into the business itself, like so they get paid the more the business makes in some way or whatever.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's one of our guiding principles is we're an entrepreneurial company. So entrepreneurial means that people can have a direct impact on their income rather than just, kind of checking the boxes and going through the day to day. They can actually look and be creative and say, how can I bring more income into this company? How can I do my job more effectively? And if this company does well and we make profits, I can get a share of those profits. So it gets people on board.
Yeah. So sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so let's say you're flipping a house and you're spending 20 hours a week. And I'm just reinforcing Rich's point here. I'm not that's all I'm doing. You'll say you're spending 20 hours a week managing contractors and budgets and schedules and all those things. Go out and find somebody and say, hey, look, I'm going to make $30,000 on this deal. I'll give you 15,000 of it if you just do all the work and you manage the contractors and all that. And then you take that 20 hours a week and you do the two most important things in your business, finding deals and finding money. And you find one more deal, you get that person to manage both the deals, you're making just as much money because now you're splitting 2 deals and you're getting 50% of each. But if you can do 3 deals, well, now you're making more money. And so give away, don't be scared to give away profit on a deal. Don't be scared to pay people, because at the end of the day, the time you're freeing up is going to allow you to find more deals and find more money. And finding deals and finding money is how you make more money long-term.
And that's part of, I mean, we make our money in real estate, right? So, and if we're just looking as investors and invest in sides, there's plenty of ways to make money in real estate besides actually investing, but we're talking about investing, right? So therefore you have to find a way to generate enough revenue in your investment business to pay people, right? So it's all coming from either your flips, your rentals, your portfolio, whatever you're doing, raising capital, whatever that is. It's all that income that you're receiving, that revenue, is what you pay people with. So whether or not you're doing a profit split, whether or not you're doing a percentage of profits in some way, a scalable, payment scale, or whether you're paying them salary or whatever, a draw system, there's a bunch of ways to do it. It all has to, at the end of the day, come from that real estate income that you're receiving from doing your business, right? And you could delay that, like what Jay just said, by saying, I'll pay you with the profits of this flip, right? And you have some sort of, now, how do you know when somebody should be 1099 versus W-2 though?
That's not a decision you make.
I love it.
The IRS has some very specific guidelines for W-2 or 1099, and I'm not an attorney and I'm not an accountant, so I don't listen to what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, it boils down to, can they sub out the work? If you won't let them sub, if it has to be them and they can't sub out the work, they're an employee. Are they committed to working certain times? If they have to be on site 8 to 5 every day, they're an employee. If they can't make their own hours and decide how they're going to do it, are you giving them their tools to do it? Are you providing tools? Well, then they're an employee. Are they free to work on other projects? No, they can only work for you. Well, then they're an employee. So all these things, are you paying for their education? Then they're an employee. Are you providing their computer and their cell phone and all that? Well, then they're an employee. And I'm not saying any one of those makes them an employee, but the IRS will look at the whole of those sorts of things and say, yeah, you're treating this person more like an employee than a contractor. So general rules of thumb are, let them sub things out if they want, let them work the hours they want, as long as they're getting the work done, let them provide their own tools, let them provide their own education, let them provide their own transportation. And then you're probably pretty good calling them a contractor.
And definitely talk to the right legal people that know what they're doing, right?
Yep.
So, because there's more than one way to do something, for sure. So, speaking of which, like I don't want to go down this rabbit hole just yet, but when it comes to hiring professionals such as legal CPAs, CFOs, other aspects for the business, that's kind of a bigger picture aspect. I would love to talk about that, but let's hold off on that for now. I like this question. So from Carrie, at what point do you pivot once you have been trying something for a while? In other words, how do you know that it's working but just hasn't been successful yet, or when it's not working at all and you need to jump ship, right? At which point do you do that, and how do you know when to pull that trigger one way or the other? AJ.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. first of all, the idea that you never give up, that's not a good motto in business. You don't give up on your goals, but you give up on actions, and those should be calculated. And what I mean by calculated is you need to have an idea of the result that you're trying to generate, and you need to have measurements in how you obtain that goal and how that goal is actually going. And so we call these KPIs, key performance indicators. So let's say that I know that I need to contact, however many homeowners so I can result in a contract being signed. And I know that 10% of everyone that I contact, right, that I'm going to get a deal. Well, then you have measurements and you have things that you're trying to achieve. And if you're not achieving them, you need to either know what's causing you to not achieve it, right? So you need to be measuring, listen, we're not getting 10%. So now let's break down our actions. What are we using call centers? What are we doing to achieve those different goals? So where in this process is things being messed up? And is this an external issue or an internal issue? And this is the big thing that I focus on, because if it's an internal issue and I'm tracking activities, so you kind of got to be a little, nutty about this. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing every day? When we wake up, what are you saying on the phone calls, right? What actions are you doing and what results are we getting? And you can adjust those as you go, but you got to track them. And I give up, or I don't give up, but I move and I change complete strategies after I've shown that, listen, we've adjusted multiple points in our process and the result is never changing. Let's move on and try a whole nother process at this point. But if I'm getting incremental increases as we make adjustments to that goal, I'm sticking with it because I say, I can see the progress. We're moving towards that. So let's keep making adjustments. We're on the way. And then what happens is once you reach that, if you're actually tracking these things, now you have a process that you can document to say, if we do this, we achieve this goal. And that's what you're trying to do. But unless you're documenting, you can't know whether you're increasing, going towards your goal or not. And you don't know whether you should quit or not. So document, look for incremental increases. And if your incremental increases are fast enough to get you to the goal that you're trying to, that desired outcome, then stick with it till you do, and then work on speeding up the process. If not, if it's flatlined and you're not getting incremental progress at all, and it's just not kind of going anywhere, then maybe it's the process as a whole. Ditch it and change strategies overall.
And so to summarize, like, this is something that we are going to spend time on here, is you're basically saying you need to have the data and you need to know what data you're looking for, and you need to be able to track that data, and you need to know what that data actually means, like what that, and so for key performance indicators and so forth. And I think that's what you see this with wholesaling. Like, wholesalers are a great example, because that's what a lot of people in real estate start out possibly as a wholesaler, because it's a low pay to play kind of like process in real estate. Even though you could I know people that spend $30,000 a month, $40,000 a month as a wholesaler, just on marketing, right? So you can also pay a lot of money being a wholesaler, but most of us are introduced to it because we think it's a low cost. We have a lot of us have a mutual friend, Cole Rudd Johnson, young guy, right? He's 22 now. Him and I actually have a business together on the side, but he's a great example of somebody that tracks KPIs all the time, key performance indicators. He went into a new market. At one point, he was in multiple markets across the US, but he went to a new market. And if he was only tracking how many deals they were doing, you would think he was super successful in a particular market. But he was also tracking his cost for marketing, his amount of time the salespeople were on those calls, the size of the assignment fees, how long it's taking them for them to replace the properties, the issues, the challenges. And at the end of the day, it was costing them about $4,000 per contract that they were assigning. And his average assignment fee in that area was $5,000. So in reality, he's making $1,000 a assignment. That doesn't also include all the time and energy and effort that it went into that market. So he's like, without that data, he was thinking he was making a ton of money, right? And everything's great. But he realized this market's not working for us and I'm not willing to adjust it anymore. So let's just pull out of that market.
It's a classic problem that startups have, right? They're spending marketing dollars, they're getting a result, and they think, oh, scale is going to take care of this, right? And as we grow, we're making more money. We may not be profitable now, but we eventually will be. And they're not even viewing their metrics to understand that expense is actually eroding away all that revenue. And then the fact that their growth rate on the revenue and their expense ratio is the exact same. And so if you're not tracking, it's crazy to think about, especially when you're just starting out. But yeah, you could easily be working, not making money, even though you're generating a lot of income. And that's not the goal, right? The goal is to make more money. But without data, you can't see how your business is internally looking. And then you can't adjust. Like, I view a business as a machine that has levers. And each one of these levers produces an outcome or a result. But if I can't see the result of the levers that I'm pushing, I'm just blindly pushing levers and the machine's going crazy until it blows up. So you really got to know what your inputs are and how they affect the output.
That's so true. And I think that so many people, the biggest mistake I see people making is they track their lagging indicators, what happened, how much revenue came in, how many deals and all that. And I think it's key to look at those leading indicators, like how many sales calls did I make, or how many properties are under contract, any of those type of things. It's like predicting possible future outcome. I think that's a key thing to track early, really get started early on that.
Yeah, your projections and where that's all going to come. And at one point we had a lot of overhead internally as a company, and I wasn't doing any projections, right? I'm like, man, how do we pay for all this all the time? And I made a spreadsheet. I made a spreadsheet that showed all our properties, when they're projected to close, all the flips, or projected revenue for each property, all the stuff, and then our overhead month to month. And I made this, I like Excel, right? I just made this fancy little, but you can also pay people to do this. And I'm like, oh, okay, this month I'm losing $50,000, right? Oh, that sucks. What can we do to change that? Oh, this month I'm making 100, right? So it allowed me to have some confidence to realize, wait, I actually have a business here that's running. I just didn't realize it. So those projections are huge. At what point though, so real estate has a bunch of directions you can take. And sometimes when we're looking to want to scale, we might need to fully commit to a certain direction. And we might need to commit to something that might be I got to jump all in to make this work, right? But that could be very scary. That could also be very challenging. That could be a lot of commitment to have to jump all in into a certain direction. It could be a marketing strategy for wholesaling. It could be what you and Kathy did, Rich, and starting Real Wealth, where all of a sudden we're going to go build this massive infrastructure to hold 50,000 members. And you're going to start with that, right? You guys didn't start that way. You started incrementally, right? Yeah. And it could be Jay that you're like, I'm going to go raise $100 million fund tomorrow, and I'm going to go buy multifamily, right? And you're starting out as a newer person, but that's a lot of commitment, a lot of cost for each one of those. How do we sit there as young entrepreneurs to one, know which direction to go? And then two, is there anything we could do to not have to fully jump all the way in and commit our entire livelihood and practically go bankrupt if we do it wrong? Any suggestions on tips and tricks on how to go through that process?
Well, any business that you start, you should know how to test. You should know how to verify if a market exists, if customers exist, if a product is viable. And it's funny because we don't talk about this a lot in real estate, but in the business world, we talk all about
all the time.
You get your customers before you start the business. You put feelers out there. You have people that are telling you basically, I will buy this, or you actually give them your credit card. You put something out there. I mean, that's what Kickstarter is for any of us that have used Kickstarter. You basically put an idea out there and you see if there's demand for it. People saying, not only will I buy this, I'm willing to give you my credit card number so that when it's ready, I'm going to buy it. And if you can't get somebody to basically commit to buying your product, you have to question whether you have a viable business. And certainly there's some businesses, I mean, I wouldn't want to start SpaceX that way. But for most businesses, mere mortals like us are going to start, there are ways to test that business, and there are ways to, in the course of weeks or months, without spending a ton of time, without spending a ton of money, without going all in, of validating your concept and validating your business idea and determining, is it going to be successful or not? And too many people kind of don't go down that road. And I've been guilty of this myself. I once put $200,000 into a business I started before I ever validated whether it was a reasonable business idea or not. I look back now and I think, wow, how could I have been so dumb? I could have spent 2 months and validated that I wasn't going to be able to make money and saved a couple $100,000. So everybody makes this mistake, but start with that idea that I can test and I can do something on a small scale and I can validate whether there are customers out there willing to pay for something before you actually go all in.
AJ or Rich, do you guys have anything to add to that?
I just said that it's going back to what you said earlier, Jay, about beginning with the end in mind. It's like, this is, what do you want to build? Where do you want to be in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and then come back to scale it back and say, okay, so if I want to be there at this point in 10 years, where do I want to be in the next 6 months? Where can I start that growth?
Yeah,
like,
I think.
Good.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at this, you know, and Jay brought up some really good points, and I'm not afraid, or I'm not one to say, yeah, just go all in it and that's how you win. No, you need to reduce risk, and risk comes in a lot of different ways. But reducing risk is not just being risk adverse. You're talking about reducing, to me, risk is more about speeding up how much I can fail, because I'm always going to fail. So I need to increase my failure rates while lowering the impact of those failures. And this is very key when starting out. Okay. So when I'm looking at saying, I know that I don't know if this is going to work out or not, I need to be able to fail. And I have to have a certain amount of leeway, right? Whether that's time, capital, whatever it is. But if I have $100,000, throwing it all into one thing and one deal to try to learn as I go, I've now given up all opportunities to fail. And that doesn't work because, well, like, I don't know, maybe I'm just an idiot, but that's just never going to work for me, right? I'm like, no, I need to be able to fail. In fact, too, if I'm looking at that, I'm probably going to bring it down to like 10% of that, right? Because then I know I have 9 more chances after that to make sure I figure this out. Because we didn't get to where we are. We weren't performing at this level when we started. We were buying these little rinky-dink storage facilities out in the middle of nowhere, trying to figure out how these things even functioned, right? We couldn't get the results that we can get now. It took us just time and time again, and the premise of it made sense. So this idea of the customers, and we came from a business background, and we said, we get the customers are here. We have some money, we can use it. We could have just gone into it big, but instead let's build it from the ground up, because this process of failing, this creates your policies. This creates processes and procedures, this POS, right, that we're talking about. This creates all this stuff. And that becomes the backbone and the foundation of the company. So your failures actually are the reason you succeed, because that teaches you and puts things into place as you grow. And if you don't allow yourself the ability to learn and to grow, you can't scale. It doesn't work.
Yeah, it's like if you walk into a casino with $500, you're going to sit down at a table with a minimum of $250. Now, 2 hands and you're broke. You have to use
but I'm going to win.
What was that?
But I'm going to win though.
Oh, so assuming you're going to win, then it's okay. Good strategy. Yeah. But you're going to sit down at a table and you're going to bet $5 or $10 a hand, and know that if you lose the first 20 hands, well, you're not out of the game. Same thing in business. And AJ just said it better than I could. I just wanted to throw in that random analogy that popped into my head when he said it.
Yeah. And it's, I also think you need to give yourself enough time to experience it as well, because too much of us maybe quit too soon. But with the incremental growth, like, I agree with all of this, like, and just a very brief story, like how most everybody, I'm hoping most everybody that watches this knows that we do a once a year conference called it's now changed, but it's called the Pacific Northwest Big Badass Real Estate Wealth Expo. And it was just the virtual Big Badass Real Estate Wealth Expo. But that all started, I wanted to do an expo. I wanted to do a conference in the Pacific Northwest area because nobody else was doing it. Was I going to just sit there and just like go all in, invest a ton of money, just make this conference when nobody knew me, by the way, like other than in the Pacific Northwest? No, I said, well, let's go start a meetup. And let's not start a meetup. Let's do one meetup and see if people will even show up to it. And we did a meetup, and 2 weeks later, we had 110 people show up to it, but just from our network. I'm like, oh, people like showing up. Let's do another one. We had 215 or 220 people show up to the second one. We're like, all right, this is real. Let's keep doing those. And then after our 4th one, we're like, all right, time to do the expo. And then we were willing to commit to do the first conference, which had 510 people at the first conference. So but we started with, let's do a meetup, which was a low cost, right? To be able to do that, one, to see if it worked. And then and we do this all the time in our business, is what can we do? And we got this actually from Jocko Willink, who wrote a book called Extreme Ownership. This is his shirt. Listen to his podcast, where he told me, right? He told me this, by the way, personally. I was at one of his conferences, and I asked a question, and he just said, why do you need to like barge through? If we're breaching a door, he's a SEAL, right? Do you sit there and you have 20 doors to open? Do you sit there and like have to like, let's run through this one right here and go? It's like, why don't you just crack the door and get some more intel to see what's behind the door before you just like kick it down and start going, right? And that was that idea of incremental growth into whatever you're going to choose. And if it's working, then go more into it. And if it's not, then you can pull back and adjust. And that's part of marketing. That's part of this business. That's multifamily. That's single family. You got to raise $100 million fund to start, maybe, right? Maybe you start a little bit lower to see if anybody wants to give you any money first before you go spend 100 grand on fund documents, like to get something. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But besides point. Love it. All right, let's go into one of the questions that's been asked, and it's one of our topics that all 3-4 of us like, and that goes into the documentation, SOPs, KPIs, which is the lifeblood of operations and running a business to make sure it's going on the right track. So when it comes to creating something like that or document it, there's also technology involved. So this is an open-ended discussion now on whether we're going to talk about technology to actually do these things with SOPs, standard operating procedures, KPIs, key performance indicators, documenting it, leadership, all that great stuff. And I want to kind of dive into that a bit more in depth for the remaining of the webinar. There's a big topic on all this stuff. Everybody listening to this, we haven't even got into hiring, firing, culture of the company, how to keep people. Like there's so much into it, which is great. And there's a lot of great books. There's a lot of great podcasts. There's a lot of great resources out there to help. And we're all still students, right? Every one of us on here is still a student trying to figure this out as much as possible. But let's dive into the documentation, SOPs, and KPIs. So Mr. Rich Fettke, Real Wealth, I know you guys are big on this, and I know you like technology too. So if I'm going to start saying like, okay, I'm going to start creating SOPs, I'm going to start creating KPIs, right? What is a process that maybe you guys go through to start to first create that and start using it and then document it? What kind of processes and tech or whatever you use to do that?
Well, I think one of the most powerful things that I've learned is to empower people to create the process, because I found that when Kathy and I would try to create the process, we'd be like, this is going to work over here in this department or whatever it is. And then it wasn't being used, or it would be changed or altered and stuff. So then we finally learned to put it over to the person who's going to be using the process, saying, hey, create this process, document this process by bullet point, this, then this, then this, and this. If you have to create little videos that go with it, whatever, but create this whole process. And then that way you can leverage that process as well. So I think that's key. You know, we use Basecamp. I know you use Asana. We use Basecamp to keep all our project management and all that in. And we also use a software called 90, which runs the EOS system, Entrepreneurial Operating System. And that has basically everyone in our company. We have 27 employees, and each one has a number. So that's that KPI, that key
number 3
indicator.
You were showing up late. Why are you late again, number 3? Like that.
Yes, yeah. What happened there?
Yeah.
So I
you are
think
no
that's
longer key. John. You are now 11.
That's a, you know. So I think it's vital. I think it's vital.
It's vital. It's vital. It's good for culture. So, but sorry, continue. I interrupted you because I thought that was funny.
Because I'm always number 2.
Yeah. You always wanted to be number 1. So now
yeah. So I think that's key. It's like having your people and your team create their own processes and then sharing it with everyone and saying, this is my process. So you kind of review it. And then if it's a process for a bunch of us, making sure that it's followed by all. That's a key, because a lot of people have their own process. Like we have several investment counselors, and we want to make sure that one person's not doing it their way and the other person's doing it their way. We want to find the most effective way and the best way to do it, and then have that be followed by all. So having it documented, having it in a place where people can access it easily. That's what we keep it in Basecamp. That's a key to that.
That's fantastic. And so now what about like AJ, when it comes to hiring people, like, is this something that, and you brought this up, Rich, about like letting the people that you hire possibly make these SOPs and processes. But when you're hiring a first couple of people, AJ, like, is this something, should you have anything in place before you hire people, or should you just like hope that it works out?
You know, I think it's more than not so much hoping that it works out. You need to have a plan. So you don't need to have all the answers. And I want everybody to understand that. That's very important. That's the point of hiring. If you had all the answers, right, then it's game over. But, you know, I certainly never had even close to all the answers. And so when we first started, like we had this vision or this idea that we would create, right, as most people do. And we looked at our faulties. So we audit, and I said, geez, we don't know how to do these things. So we decided the person we wanted to hire, which was somebody that had worked with franchises. Okay. So he'd worked with franchises and across multiple states. And so we brought him on, and I said, okay, listen, I need you to help us now make this thing really legitimate, right? We'd already hired a few other people, but we needed to create a look, a feel, and an operating process, manuals, everything else to operate it the same way, because I knew that a business is something that obviously takes in a profit, more revenue, but can reallocate that revenue and get a known rate of return. Well, the only way to be able to reallocate revenue and get a known rate of return is to actually have a process to produce that return. And so we needed someone to help us create that. That's fine. Go find somebody, whether it be a coach, whether it be a hire, right, to help you create processes and procedures and standardize actions, and then also measure those, right? The technology doesn't do it for you, but it allows you to automate. Remember my three things where I say, you either need to automate, hire, or get rid of. We use, same thing. We use Basecamp. We use Monday for coordination with all our other people to track timelines and things like that. Software is an extremely critical portion, but software will only do what you tell it to do. So if you throw a bunch of people in Basecamp, it just doesn't do anything unless you have already created those processes, right? And those procedures. And if you don't know how, that's fine. There's endless books, like go read the E-Myth, right? And there's all these books that talk about this and creating these. These are all learned things, right? You can learn how to do those, and you can hire that out, and you can find a coach. I know once we get started talking about stuff, it can be overwhelming, but don't let it be. It's okay that you don't know everything. And yes, you can hire somebody, and absolutely, yes, you can find a coach or get someone to help you create these policies and procedures. That's totally fine if you don't know, exactly what your business needs.
Yeah, and if you have no money, listen to books, listen to audio
there's
tapes.
So much free material out there on creating. I mean, you can go, for most businesses, I can go and download manuals for the employees today. I can go online today and find manuals on how to run most real estate businesses that you can download for free and start looking at it to create your own. The internet provides so many resources. I mean, exactly like what we're doing here, and we're talking about it. You need to get your path down and understand that you need to create these things, the technology to help you administer the policies and procedures, which all these are great options, and there's more, and then start looking at exactly what needs to be put into place to get that result that you need. And when you get it wrong, that's totally fine, because that's how it works. Remember, you got to go back and adjust. So don't think that you need to do it on your own.
Yeah, I think that's important too. I want to go back to the good old Bible of initial real estate investors, Rich Dad Poor Dad, where most of us at some point read that book, right? But Robert Kiyosaki always said that, like you just said, like you're gonna AJ, you literally just said, like, you're gonna make some failure points for the most part, and that's how you learn, that's how you grow. And Robert Kiyosaki always says, like, hey, our traditional education says failure is very bad. Don't ever fail, because you get graded, you get F's, you get D's, you get C's. Don't cheat off other people, which is cooperation in the business world, growing together. So it's like, so we have to untrain ourselves and retrain ourselves to realize that failure is going to happen, but it's only temporary, right? And it's what we learn from, and we make the most successes because of what we're learning from our failures. And then cooperation, which in education is cheating, is actually what makes the business world work, which is we all cooperate and work with each other in some capacity.
Yeah. Just a big piece of advice for any parents out there: when you're sitting around the dinner table at night, instead of talking about all the great things that happened throughout the day, talk about the failures. Talk about all the things that went wrong. Let your kids realize that, hey, this is good. Talking about failures is good. And I'm not the only one that's failing. My mom's failing, my dad's failing, and everybody's failing lots of times all day. And normalize failure. Because that's what you just said, Tarl, was absolutely right. That in today's world, we don't normalize failure. Failure is a bad thing. I love talking about the mistakes I make. I mean, I just admitted to losing $200,000 in a business a few minutes ago because I'm an idiot. And so we need to talk about those things. If that helps somebody like go out and be willing to take some risk, because, hey, Jay Scott lost $200,000 in a business. He's not perfect. Yeah. We all make mistakes, and we need to talk about them more and not be scared of them.
Yeah. I used to want to be a competitive skier in like a park and rail. And, me and my friends, one who was an Olympic skier, we always joked that, if you didn't have a wipeout, you basically wasted the day, because if you're not having a really hard crash, you were the one out of the group who wasn't pushing it. Right? It was actually a bad thing. Whoever had the biggest yard sale, he was the guy that was pushing it the hardest. He was the guy that went out there, dude, you almost broke your arm. Way to go. Like it was a badge of honor because you knew you were pushing it. You knew you were learning, and whoever crashed the most, they always ended up excelling more. And that's the thing. And it goes back to kind of what we talked about earlier is you need to give yourself room to fail, like, right? You don't want to kill yourself, but at the same time, you need to move forward and you got to push it. And this is a creation process. So each one of our businesses, I don't care if it's Tarl, Rich, or Jay Scott, it doesn't matter. All of us have different administration processes in them, right? That are specific to us, our business, our goal, and our outlook. And yours will be too. It'll be very tailored to you. And so you have the ability to create to get the best outcome out of your business. And you need to give yourself that ability to fail and give yourself that ability to create something that works for you.
Rich, can you relate to any of that at all?
Absolutely. You know, it's so funny you bring up that because my brother was a ski instructor at SQUA and he used to take people down things and they'd be, look, I didn't even fall. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you didn't push that edge. So it's very fitting. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's you put yourself out there, you stretch and you find that edge and you push the edge a little bit. And then if you go over the edge, you're like, okay, I learned. It's like, there's winners and learners.
Bingo.
Talking about the hiring thing real quick, because I just happened to be thinking about this. I was interviewing Nathan Brooks, who owns a big turnkey company, on my podcast a week ago. And we had a great discussion about hiring. And he's fantastic at it. And so I asked him, what's the biggest mistake you see people make when they hire? And his answer was that too often we hire people that aren't qualified for the job. We hire people that we feel like we want to save money. So we're going to bring in a warm body that we're going to train, and we're going to hand them our SOPs, and we're going to sit with them and train them. And too often what we find is that the money we're saving by bringing in somebody that's not overly qualified is a waste of money. And instead, bring in the people that you're paying too much money to, but who can move your business forward, who can help you improve on those SOPs, and who can help you transform your business, even if it's costing more money, because ultimately you might be paying 20 or 30% more for the good people, but they're going to push your business forward 100 or 200 or 500%. So when it comes to hiring, don't cheap out and think, okay, I need a warm body, but I don't want to pay a lot of money. It should be just the opposite. Find the best person for the position that you can absolutely possibly afford.
Yeah,
that also goes
and pay him double and hire two people who are just lukewarm, and just pay them half that for sure.
And that also goes to hiring. I find that more people hire too late. They don't hire too soon. They hire too late. It's when they're totally burnt out, or the business is now not able to move forward. You're losing clients, you're losing whatever it may be, right? You're not getting the properties, you're whatever is going on. And by that time, it's already too late. Now you got to hire somebody to get in to catch up. It's not even build it now. It's at that point. So just like not paying somebody too little, you don't want to wait too long, because the business will suffer for that. And then you're always caught in perpetual catch up. By the time that person's caught up, you're already in need to get your next person on board. So it pays off to pay well and to pay early. It should, if you're hiring right. They should be assets that your revenue should exaggerate that income that you're paying them, offset that liability.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to fire fast too.
Yes.
with that on the other side of it,
Yes.
We've been caught in that trap. We keep trying to get, nurture someone or train them or get them to do what they need to do. And we put it off too long.
Yeah, now I want to just say a bunch of stuff with what you kind of I'm like hearing this, I'm like, oh, I've been through all this, but even you go back to like what you just said, Rich, a second ago about hiring fast, right? And you're trying to nurture. You're like, I want to answer a question to myself first: is did I give these people the tools they needed to succeed in the position that they're in to begin with? Like, did they need something from me? Was it clear in my business what they needed to actually do in the business to begin with?
Huge,
right?
Huge.
And if I can't say yes to that, then it's my fault they're failing. right, in their position.
Yep.
And so, and I just very super brief story. When I hired our acquisition guy, Nate, there was a period of time in 2017, I was going to fire him. Like I was just going to let him go. No, 2016. I was going to fire him after like 3 or 4 months of him working with us, and he knew it. So, and because I told him, but I'm very open with my team members. But then I went to actually listen to Extreme Ownership with Jocko Willink, and I realized that's where I got this. I'm like, wait a second, I did not do what I should have done as a leader for Nate. He did not actually have very clear guidelines of what made him successful in the business. He did not have the resources that he needed to actually be successful in what he was doing. And like, I didn't actually I didn't even like tell him what to do. Like I started going through all that. I'm like, wait a second. All right, this is my fault. And I told him that, and then we fixed it and moved on. Right. And so that's a huge thing. And so, but also to what you said, Jay, about, or one of you guys said it, I don't remember anymore, about hiring. We try to like hire the people and try to nurture them forever and try to build them up to what they actually need to be. And instead of just hiring the person you actually need, and that's going to push you in your business to where it needs to go. Like no offense to Nate, actually it is offense to Nate, our most important key member is Serena, right, on our team, right? But when I hired Serena, she had no background in real estate whatsoever. I would never hire that Serena today in my business. If I met that Serena today, would I met her back in 2015? I'd be like, sorry, good luck, right? That's just not going to have it, because my level of needing was like, I need a little assistant to kind of like help out. But I would hire the Serena who she is now, right, today. But it took years to get her to that point. So do you have time in your business?
She's your key employee today?
100%. Yeah.
Hey, Serena, if you're listening to this, ask for a raise.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to say.
She gets paid a lot of money. So let's figure out. Shut up. All right. This webinar is over. See you guys later. We're going to edit this part out. The point of it is that like it took years to get to where all of a sudden that person is fully trained to do what they do. And luckily she was the right person. So if you're looking to hire somebody that you have to train everything to, it takes time. It takes a lot of time. And then they might leave, right? And then you got nothing out of it but wasted time. So
you want to get those documented processes. So if someone does leave, you want to make sure that they've documented exactly what they do and how they do it. That's key.
Yeah.
I was just about to say that for us, one of the biggest things with that is that you can't consolidate risk within individuals within the company. Companies cannot, we've really tried to make sure that the process, and obviously some jobs are a lot easier than others. Once you get into an upper level, that's a very different story. But with all of our sites across multiple states, I want to know that if somebody leaves, I can basically put in somebody else and they can operate our assets within, a week. We do online training and on-site training. We want them, we back them up, we support them, everything, but it can't be dependent on one person. If not, my business could never run across multiple states and locations, or it just wouldn't work. So you have to really look at those jobs you're hiring for and say, if you're not set up in a position to succeed, as in you can be put into this and with a little training, you can get it quickly. That means you have a lot more risk on the person that's in that position. Because if they, that training time shouldn't take 6 months.
Yep.
Because then when they leave, the next person comes in and they may not even work out. And all of a sudden you got a year where that position's not even excelling. That's very damaging to the business.
Very. I love all this topic. I love talking to all of you. So let's wrap up, and we might have to do another one of these later, right?
This is good.
Yeah, this is good stuff, right? I love hearing ourselves talk. It's so good.
It's like, just play it. It's awesome. I'm learning.
Yeah. This is the best one I've ever heard. So, by the way, I'm not gonna say it. So let's wrap up with some final things. When it comes to scaling and systemizing our businesses, which is a big topic, right? What is the one thing we as investors should not go do, right, in order to do that? What is the one thing we shouldn't be doing, or what's the one thing we should not do if I want to go scale my business in one direction or another? Mr. J. Scott.
I don't like the way you asked that question.
Well, then answer whatever the hell you want. I don't care. Like, you do it anyways.
Okay. Well, I'm going to answer a different question because there was something I wanted to say.
Whatever. I don't even know why I'm here.
We're ending. No. So this is kind of tangential to scaling. This is just good business practice. But you said something earlier that I loved. You were talking about Nate and how you screwed up when you hired him by not really setting him up for success. I think we'd all be served better to admit our mistakes and to accept responsibility for everything that happens in your business. I'm a big fan of saying, if something goes wrong in my business, it's my fault. No exceptions. And does that mean I can always keep something from happening? No. Does that mean I can always predict something? No. But I'm willing to accept responsibility because it's my business and the buck stops with me. And by taking that attitude, it forces you to think about the things that can go wrong. It forces you to think about how you mitigate those things going wrong. It forces you to put good people in place because you know if they screw up, it's on you. And so in my opinion, everybody needs to be saying, no matter what happens in my business, no exceptions, no matter what bad things happen in my business, it's my fault.
It's great.
Extreme
Hey,
ownership.
I haven't read that book, but based on the title, yeah, yep.
He signed it.
Yeah, I not only agree 100%. I think the biggest mistake people make is they expect to hire somebody else and them to solve the problems in the business to work out. And that's not how it works. And if you go into it that way, you're setting somebody up for failure. And two, I think you're doing it to shift blame. Just like oh, it's not my business would have been amazing, but I had a bad hire.
Yeah,
that's
I did.
That is, and like to Jay Scott's point, it's you're using it as an scapegoat to shift your failures onto somebody else. And so when you're starting a business, don't expect a coach, don't expect other people to come in and solve your problems and make your business great. Expect other people to participate in making the business great under your direction, and then own it when it doesn't work out and fail quick, and just learn from it and fix it.
Well, you can even hire out that though. I actually believe this. You can hire a CEO to run your business for you, right?
100%. But then they can fail. So it still falls on you. Like Jay said, it's, you got to monitor that CEO and make sure that because you also don't want to give your culture over to somebody else.
That's
right.
Yeah.
And
that culture,
then you hire somebody to help you.
Okay. Just checking.
If you find yourself saying, yeah, my partner screwed up and screwed me over, the lender didn't do what he said he was going to do, or the contractor screwed up this project. No. Yeah, maybe those things are true, but at the end of the day, that's your fault.
It's your fault.
That is your fault.
You bought the house. You picked the lender. You hired the person.
And
it's your freaking business.
You didn't manage them or mitigate.
You didn't know what was going on. You had no idea. Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
I think that goes back to that. You're not a victim, right? In that case, like you might feel that way. There's no way you can create change if you have that victim mentality.
Yeah.
Because yeah, Rich, you want to speak on that?
Well, just going beyond it, I agree 100%. So 100% on that. And going back to your question about what's the biggest mistake that you can think you can make in scaling, I think it's being quiet, not being transparent. I think leaders are paid to have effective conversations. That's what we're paid more than, when you like Jay, you're talking about the $500 an hour, $1,000 an hour. And the things you related to that, most of those were having effective conversations with people. And I think it's with your team.
Love that.
If you're not having effective conversations consistently, then you're dropping the ball. If you're like, I'm going to go hire this person, and then I'm going to go to my office and close the door and go to work on my stuff, then you're going to be kicking yourself because you're going to have to take responsibility for your mess up.
Absolutely. And if you want to go to one more step on that in communication, good and bad, right? And like don't just communicate all the good in your company. Also, I believe this is my culture. I tell my team everything. I want them to be a part of what's really going on, good and bad, so they can understand why decisions are being made as they are, right? And even if it's bad, hey, we're not doing good right now. What can we do? Or we're hurting financially in some way, or this is happening over here. People will rally, right? If they believe in that culture and want to support each other and help do that. But if you take that all in as a leader and you don't share that with your team, they're going to make their own story up of what's really happening. That story is going to be made. And it's going to be either your story, that's the truth, or it's going to be their story, which is going to be based off of gossip and other issues. And they're going to be perceiving like, oh, Tarl's a jerk. He's holding with only money. Why didn't we get that bonus after all? There's going to be a story, right?
Yeah.
So
That's
I'd
one of
rather
our core
do this.
values at Real Wealth is transparency.
Yes.
And it's between us and, you know, the team, but it's also with our members. Like if a deal's going wrong and it's not going the way it's supposed to, it's like right up front, transparency. This is not going the way we thought it would. Here's what we're going to try to do to fix it and all that stuff. So transparency all the way around.
Yeah,
All the
we
way
look
around.
at, we actually just had a meeting on this morning with some of my executives on our company that we started this year. And we look at like our recipe for success, right? That's a map, right? Now, we don't know the exact chart and the exact way we're going to get it, but this is the recipe for success on our value add strategy, everything we do. That's our map. But our core values, who we are and what makes us up, that's our compass.
Mm-hmm.
And these are two separate things. And we keep them separate. But that core value that you all participate in, right? If you're keeping things from your employees, and if you're not being honest, you're automatically going away from your core values. And when we set up our map, if I'm not being 100% transparent, if we're not working together, my compass no longer works on the map. And somebody else's compass is pointing one way, we're pointing, and the team fractures. So you've got to align all the not only objectives, but everything going on within the business together. And you have to be transparent about what's going on. If not, why'd you hire them? Right? They're there to help you build something great and solve problems. So this idea, once again, of our map and our compass, this is how we construct this, and this is how we look at it. And we need to all be on the same page, or you're not going to end up where you want to be. You have two different stories going on.
Great.
So good. So good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Guys, gentlemen, where can they get a hold of you, Mr. Rich Fettke?
Realwealth.com. That's the easy way.
Yeah. It used to be Real Wealth Network. Now it's Real Wealth.
Yeah.
You guys bought that URL. Mr. AJ Osborne.
Selfstorageincome.com or Instagram, AJ Osborne. It's easy enough.
And Mr. J. Scott, did you get all the Instagram followers you wanted last time?
I hit 10,000.
Nice.
You're called an influencer now.
Yeah, right.
I am
Free stuff.
It's crazy. I think I have one new feature thanks to it. So I guess I can now say I'm an influencer on Instagram. Anyway, Instagram, Facebook, website, jscott.com. If anybody wants to send me an email, j@jscott.com, and check out the Bigger Pockets Business Podcast.
Amen. Because he's not officially a co-host of the Fixated on Real Estate webinar.
I'm not. I'm only a host of one podcast.
That's right. Bigger Pockets Business Podcast. Check it out.
And
of course, I am Tarl Yarber. You can follow me. Just type my name in. I'm the only one in the world. And whether it's Instagram, Facebook, I probably won't accept you on Facebook. So go to Instagram. Facebook's for my mom. The outside of that, you can also look at our company, Fixated RE, Fixated Real Estate, in Instagram and Facebook as well, and get a hold of us there. We do reply back to messages on those platforms all day. Outside of that, we'll do another webinar next week, and another one after that, and another one, as long as we keep remembering to doing these things. I'm so excited for these. Thank you, gentlemen, once again. If you guys want to watch the replay, it will be on a YouTube channel later. It's also on the biggerpockets.com Facebook page that you guys can watch the replay as well. Both are equally awesome, and we will see you guys on the next one. Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Appreciate it, everybody.